Good evening. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'm Amita Balachandra. There's a very important topic that we're going to be talking about today, and that is of child marriages. Now, the reason we picked this up is there is a report that UNICEF has put out, and this is the report, right? They say that 10 million additional child marriages may occur before the end of the decade. They've listed out a list of problems, major problems that is causing child marriages. They've also said that 100 million girls were at risk of child marriages in the next decade before the COVID-19 outbreak. And now there is an additional 10 million child marriages that may occur, and that is because of COVID. Worldwide, they also say an estimated 650 million girls and women alive today were married off in childhood. And this is the problem. About half of those are occurring in Bangladesh, Brazil, Ethiopia, India, and Nigeria. So India is one of those 5 countries. So what we're going to do today is talk about what the major problems are, what impact COVID-19 has had on young girls, and most importantly, what are the solutions. And to have that conversation with me, I have with me Tanishta Datta, who is a child protection specialist at UNICEF, joining me right now. I'm very pleased to have her on the show to be able to make time and speak to us not just about the report, but also about what the possible solutions could be. Ms. Datta, thank you so much for joining us. Before we talk about India itself, if you can first of all tell us what impact COVID-19 has, what was the estimate before COVID-19 and what it is now?
Yeah. See, this report is of course a global report. So let me also put it in context of what it means for India. Now, India made significant gains in the last decade on ending child marriage, right? So from somewhere around 47% in 2005, we had reduced child marriage to about 26.6% by 2015. Now, this translated into still, despite all the decadal gains that we had in reducing child marriage, India still carried a large burden of the child brides of the world. Like every third child bride globally was from India. So in absolute numbers wise, we were contributing a lot to this issue globally as well. What COVID-19 has done is that it has really threatened this, momentum on the reduction of child marriage globally, but as well as in India. The global report, of course, as you rightly said, has estimated an additional risk of 10 million child marriages of girls over the next decade. India, and along with some other major countries, accounts for half of it. We also saw this corroborate a lot during the lockdown. Our partners reported instances of many child marriages happening, cases where they were able to prevent, cases where they were not able to prevent. In June, the Ministry of Women and Child Development said that they had stopped through Childline about 900 marriages in that lockdown period between April to June. So we have a lot of this anecdotal evidence. Of course, this has not really been studied in a major way yet in terms of the exact numbers as it pans out in India. These are, of course, estimates and projections, as you know, in the global report. Now, in addition to this impact of the increased risk of child marriage, girl children have experienced the impact of COVID disproportionately. There is also, the lack of mobility, which has affected girls more than boys. Digital divide. We know there is a gender divide in the access of digital resources. And again, girls are way behind than boys on this. The corresponding lack of access to education. If there's just one phone in the family and there is a boy and a girl, both have to use it, we know that most of the time it's the boy who has had preference to use that phone for online classes. Increased risk of gender-based violence and mental health issues. A lot of smaller studies by our partners with adolescent girls have, corroborated some of these impacts as well. A lot of concern around mental health, inability to move out, meet friends, seek help and support on any issues that they have faced. So, it has really compounded this overall impact on girl children in the country. The next part of your question was, I think, on what were the major reasons for this, right? So, yes. As the global report has also pointed out, 3 or 4 main reasons for it. I would like to dwell a little bit in detail on some of them. One, of course, is the continued lack of access to education. Now, let us take the figures in India pre-COVID. We had by almost 50% of girls drop out by the time they reach class 10. So about 6 million girls already who are out of school, every year. And, COVID lockdown, the extended school closures, schools in many places are still closed or open only partially. So there's only certain grades that have resumed and the others are still continuing in closed mode or in online modes, and not everybody is able to access that. And so a lot of children, especially girls, are really pushed to the brink now. And, families as a coping mechanism are resorting to then early marriages to deal with this kind of a situation. It's also restricted girls' aspirations in many ways. So since schools are closed and there's no sign of them opening anytime soon, might as well get the girls married. The other point the report has highlighted is the economic shock. And we've seen this panning out in India. We know already through a lot of evidence that poverty is a key driver for child marriage. And in a situation like what we had in the pandemic, the economic shocks that a family experienced, a negative coping mechanism will translate into issues like this: early marriage, higher incidences of child labor and therefore trafficking, families' inability to cope with the stress and anxiety resulting in higher punishment and mental health issues in the family as well. So there are many ways in which this pans out.
But I want to ask you this right now. As far as India is concerned, if you can give us a breakup, or if you can tell us how worse is it in certain parts of the country as opposed to the rest of the country? And is there a difference between rural areas and urban areas, for instance?
Yes, definitely. Child marriage is, as the data shows us, NFHS data of NFHS 4, which was 2015-16. The rural rates of child marriage are obviously much higher. It's about 32% compared to urban 18%. So it's almost double, let's say, roughly. So definitely it's the rural, it's more a rural phenomena, and that's what's driving child marriages a lot. Among states also, the high prevalent states are the Rajasthan, West Bengal, Bihar, UP, just by sheer numbers adds to this total. But also within some seemingly developed states like Tamil Nadu or Telangana or Andhra Pradesh also, there are pockets, districts where the child marriage rates are very high. The prevalence is very high. So in that sense, it's a very universal problem. But yes, definitely we know which are the states that are driving the numbers. And these are some of the states, West Bengal, Rajasthan, Bihar, UP. These are driving the big numbers. And to be able to shift the needle on, reducing child marriage, we'll definitely have to prioritize work in these states.
Talking about problems, one of the things that I also want to talk about is school closures, for instance, where looking at cases rising in many parts of the country. We're looking at schools perhaps being closed, sort of reopened, and then getting them to close again. This may happen over the next couple of months. We don't know how long this is going to go on for. This is the new normal now. So if you can tell us what impact that's going to have on young children, young girls, and the fact that now education, do you believe education is the only way to sort of make sure that this rate is, comes down at some point?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we've seen a lot of evidence worldwide as well as in India of the close linkage between keeping girls in school longer and the reduction of child marriage, right? And this very construct is now threatened because the schools where we encouraged girls to go and keep them there, and for them to continue to transition from elementary to secondary levels to higher education, which delays the age of marriage, that those avenues are now suddenly restricted for many families. We know that while many schools are doing digital education, a lot of children in marginalized areas and digitally dark areas are not really able to access those. So they were already at high risk of dropping out from school. As I said, almost 50% of girls drop out before they reach class 10. So they were already at very high risk of dropping out. And the prolonged closure of schools further de-incentivizes the parents from sending children to school. Why should they invest in new devices or an internet connection for a school that anyway they were sort of not very convinced about continuing their daughters in. So that sort of pushes them out of the system. And it's very easy when you overlay this with the economic shock that a family is facing, and the need for families to sort of recoup their finances. The negative coping mechanism very often results in girls getting married off early, because parents are also thinking that this is a good time to have this. And these are actually anecdotes and examples our partners have told us, that during the lockdown many families thought it would be cheaper to marry off a daughter now, because dowry etc will not be such a problem, we won't have to call too many guests. There was also this thing that we are under the radar now, it's lockdown, so nobody is really going to be able to come and see and see what's going on. So many girls, in consultations we had with adolescent girls also, they expressed these fears. See, the pandemic has been a very strange thing for children and girls especially. The very measures that one takes in a pandemic to contain the disease are also the measures that are increasing vulnerability of children. They are not going to school. They are not able to therefore flag maybe to teachers, about any concerns they have. Access to services have been stopped. So the social protection services, the child protection services, which could otherwise reach out to girls, check in on them, go to them in case of a call or a distress call for distress, they were not able to move around freely. So they got cut off from also those grievance redressal kind of services. And that really provided a blanket for a lot of abuses to happen, whether it's child marriage, whether it's gender-based violence, domestic violence, child labor. And that is, I think, the kind of space that UNICEF is coming from, to highlight that if the recovery plan to the pandemic does not take into account these kind of aftershock impacts on children, we would have a whole generation of children that we are losing out, because of these stress factors of child marriage, child labor, and other things.
So what needs to be taken into account then? Because this is going to go on for a while now. What are the potential solutions?
Looks like. Yes, so I think what our recommendations are is, the first point being on having comprehensive social protection measures. Families need to be supported through this, right? So to have cash transfer programs and to ensure that they are able to access and leverage scholarships, any income aid that families are able to get from all these rehabilitation packages that are there. But more importantly, our experience has shown that just a cash transfer alone will not work. This also has to go hand in hand with other services that need to be there for children, mental health, skilling and employment services. They need to see a future for themselves, continuing education. They need to have that, connect from school to work transition. There needs to be an enabling environment built in communities. So some of this work on campaigns, etc., for communities to understand the ill effects of child marriage, etc., need to continue in some form or the other to build that sort of a larger environment. That is one basket of interventions that we are suggesting. The second is, of course, doing more on safeguarding children's right to education, to ensure that children, especially girls, are able to access and continue their education. And this again is, of course, as we said, it's critical. And there are certain things to consider now. Like a lot of people have moved to digital classes, but does everybody have access to digital resources? So we need to really invest in now low-tech solutions. How can we use TV and radio? We need to have blended approaches, that can reach out to even some of the digital dark areas. For example, UNICEF in Chhattisgarh has worked on very comprehensive education packages that can be done through television and radio, which are more easily accessible in the areas, than digital phones or mobile phones. So training teachers to be able to use these lessons on TV to transact classes with children in an open, environment and things like that. So these are some approaches I think that we'll have to invest in as all the stakeholders who are involved in this work to see that we reach out to the last child on the chain. And the third area really is also making sure that other gamut of services for girls are available to them and accessible to them. These include services of health and reproductive health, which are very critical, as we know. These also include services on mental health, on gender-based violence, being able to report and seek help as and when required. The essential child protection services like Childline, etc., should also be available to them, and these should be adequately funded. One of the lessons learned for UNICEF during this pandemic, when we were trying to also respond, was that many of these services don't count as essential services. So they were not able to function in an ideal manner during the lockdown. And that is a key advocacy point for us now, that during emergencies, the child protection services should also be seen as an emergency service, because children's vulnerability really get compounded in any kind of emergency situation, whether it's a pandemic like this or whether it's any other natural disaster or any shock that a community faces. So these are some of the key highlights also, which I think the global report also has covered.
Three major takeaways, like you said. One is that families need to be supported, so it's not just cash transfer programs, but also other services that need to go hand in hand for children. Second, you said that digital divide is a huge problem right now. In fact, we've done a story as well on this in Mumbai, in Mumbai's Dharavi, and the fact that it's there in urban areas as well, and that you can take a look at it on our channel as well. Then the third is services for health for girl children. That is as important as well. But these are the three things that we should be focusing on, and I hope that we do, because this right now could be a huge problem. It already is a problem, but if it's going to get worse, it's going to be a really major problem that India needs to be tackling. But Ms. Atta, thank you so much for joining us and giving us that information.